Hey, Sparna here. This is the webinar for
Yes, we're just starting.
Position.
Hey, Sparna,
Joe,
can you hear me? Very good. Good morning.
Yes.
Okay,
morning.
And I'm sorry. Is that Karen Bell?
Hi.
Hi, Karen. Your associate said that you would be. Is that Karen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Very good. So let's go ahead and start. Let me get to here, and then I'll minimize that, I guess, and hit play. Okay, so we wanted to talk about a topic that's been, excuse me for a second, a topic that I've been a little bit concerned about recently, although it's a topic that I've heard about for a long time. That is just, to me, the topic is that a lot of us out there in the Scrum teams are not having a full-time Scrum Master in the team. You know, whether we're playing the role of Scrum Master or something else in the team, we're seeing that the Scrum Master role is not full-time, and there are lots of reasons for that. We'll get into some of that at least, and variations of that. I might say about the at least immediate cause as to why. But anyway, that's a concern of mine. I think the right way to play it professionally is at least normally to be full-time. So let's talk about that. So that's why we're talking about this subject. I see this, I hear this, I see this issue, I hear this question, and hence we're talking about it here as a webinar. Okay, so when should you be full-time? And there's going to be, hold on, maybe I did the wrong thing, just a second. I think I may have opened the wrong one. Okay, now we have this one. Okay, excuse me, sorry about that. Okay, so our agenda is to discuss when we should have a full-time Scrum Master. And my basic answer is usually if we're doing Scrum professionally, which we're not always doing. We're sometimes doing it in a semi-professional amateur way or at home. But anyway, if we're doing it professionally, at least I'm recommending normally we should have a full-time Scrum Master. And then situations where it can't be so. And then some brief thoughts, at least in this 30 minutes, about why for each of those. I've got about, I think, 7 of them. And then in the next webinar, I want to talk about how do we convince the managers, at least more often, to give us a full-time Scrum Master, because I think that's certainly been a problem that they wouldn't agree to it or wouldn't have enough people and so forth. So how do we go about convincing them? And some other issues around that. Okay, so here's my suggestion, or at least my strong preference, which is to normally have a full-time Scrum Master, the usual situation. So I'm assuming normal also includes, we have a team of 7 or 7-ish, maybe 6, maybe 8. We have a relatively stable team. We're playing professionally. We all agree, the company agrees, the team agrees that we want to get better. The company is willing to change. So you are kind of getting the idea that I'm expecting the Scrum Master to be a change agent. And if the company doesn't want to change, not that much use in a change agent. That the team, not just one person, but you all, the team wants to win. And that you can find a decent Scrum Master. And I think most of us normally should be able to do that. I'm not sure that you can do that instantaneously or in every case. And it may take several weeks, months, whatever, to find a good enough Scrum Master. But I think normally you can do that just as you can normally find good people to be in the team. So anyway, that's my normal situation. I think we should have a full-time Scrum Master. Okay, so let's talk about what that means and why I'm saying that. So to me, the key thing that the Scrum Master is trying to do is increase the velocity significantly. Maybe doubling it in 6 months, maybe doubling it in a year, but increase the velocity significantly. Even if you don't achieve that goal of doubling, if you increase the velocity significantly and you do these other things, I think it has, it easily pays for itself to have a full-time Scrum Master. And I think one of the root causes is nobody thinks of that as key to the job of being Scrum Master. Okay, so what are the additional criteria or conditions, you might say? We want the team and the Scrum Master, for that matter, to be happier, to have more fun. We want to produce a higher quality work. As soon as you start talking about productivity metrics, the team tends to expect I'm not sure want, I was about to say want, but they expect that they have to reduce the quality to have the higher productivity, which is not really higher productivity. But anyway, they tend to do that. That's very common. The root behind why Ken Schreiber does the squirrel burger exercise. I think you also have to tell the team we're going to be working fewer hours. And that's based on what I normally see, not universally by any means, but normally see, which is in our industry, we tend to work too hard. We tend to work, even if we're not asked, we tend to work 50, 60 or more hours per week. So I'm not sure that I'm entirely tied to the 40 idea. It might be less, might be a little bit more, but we're working about 40 hours a week is what we should be doing. Let me let the other, excuse me just a second. And sorry. Good morning, Eric. We've already started. We're on, we're a couple slides in. So let me go back to that. Excuse me, I've got to minimize that. Okay, so we want to work fewer hours, and we want to deliver more business value per story point. But to me, that's kind of a line in there to say that the product owner also, and the rest of the team for that matter, but also is very important. We want them all to be full-time, pigs, as we say, or fully dedicated, committed, as we say. Okay, so if we do those things, is the Scrum Master valuable? I think the key, it's absolutely true that they are. So we mentioned before the idea of increasing it by 100% in a year in 6 months, or some idea like that. Even if it's not that much, it's still extraordinarily valuable if you start to do the math. So if I'm not going to go into the math in this webinar, but I have done, and I've got it other places. But assuming some basic, which I think are reasonable assumptions, that means that the Scrum Master, by increasing the velocity 100%, is actually creating $3 million in value per year on a go-forward basis, which to me easily justifies having a full-time Scrum Master, particularly assuming all these other conditions that we said. And I think it's more fun for the team. They can feel more satisfaction. Now, as soon as we talk about productivity metrics, the team assumes they're going to be pushed, they're going to be under stress, they're not going to be having fun, they're going to be having less fun, all these other bad things. So it's very valuable, and if we do it right, if we do it professionally, it should be actually more fun, or maybe fun's not the best word for you. It depends on how you feel about that word. Maybe you can say they're having more satisfaction because they can be so proud of winning and of giving more stuff to the customers that they care about. Okay, so some other conditions. The Scrum Master must be decent at working on impediments. I'm not sure that's universally true, but I think that's normally true. I mean, some are better than others at that and have had more experience doing that. But I think most Scrum Masters pretty quickly can be at least decent at working on the impediments. The team gives the Scrum, the company gives the Scrum team money, people, and approval, some help, and maybe probably in all three of those areas, money, people, and approval, to fix impediments. A key thing that I don't really always honestly see is the company's willing to change. I think most companies are willing to change, some more, some less, but occasionally you get companies that are really quite reluctant to change. So that is a key condition. The team can identify decent impediments, important impediments that could lead to a productivity increase of 100%. And I think sometimes the team is reluctant to do so for a number of different reasons. We learn pretty quickly how to work on impediments one at a time in priority order. So if we don't do that, if we only work hard on a lot of unimportant impediments, we're not going to see much in the way of benefits. And so possibly, in that case, one can imagine at least that the full-time Scrum Master is not justified. And then they define the idea of impediment, or opportunities for improvement, as you prefer. They define that idea quite broadly so that it includes everything that it needs to include to get the most improvement the quickest. Okay, so what does the Scrum Master do? We won't go through the usual litany that we might do in a CSM course that I'm going to start tomorrow. But key is working on impediments. So they're either in fixing the impediments themselves in some sense or another, or they're helping, or you might say encouraging, nudging others to fix the impediments. So they can work on impediments, presumably with their bare hands, as we might say, or they're you might say removing the impediments of other people that are working on the real impediments for this team, and getting it done more quickly, or at least, or maybe perhaps somewhat better. And the result then is that the velocity goes up significantly, as we said. So in our view, doing all that, the Scrum Master is quite busy all day. They're not just facilitating the daily Scrum, for example, for 15 minutes, which is what some people think. The Scrum Master doesn't do this alone. So let's just, maybe it's obvious to you, but at least I want to mention it. We talked about the managers providing the support in terms of money, people, and approval. We talked about the Scrum team identifying good impediments, so they're key in all this really working well. We're expecting impediments to be fixed by the Scrum Master, the Scrum team, so we've already mentioned them. But also we're expecting some impediments to be fixed by people outside the team, or at least worked on, participate in the fixing of the impediments, which might include, for example, the managers, but possibly lots of other people inside the company. We're also expecting, at least some of the time, people outside the company to help fix some of the impediments. And they're often quite, much more capable than we are, we inside the team, at doing so, or at least they're available. Okay, so what is an impediment? I think that's not really the focus of this webinar, but it's really any opportunity for improvement. So we define it very broadly. It could be people issues, could be technical issues, organizational issues, any number of things. We're not doing the process correctly, all those kinds of things. So I like to, at least recently, I've started to conjugate the verb to suck. That is to say, I suck, we suck, and they suck. So in all those areas where we're not perfect yet, we can improve individually as a team, or in terms of the influence of the people outside the team. I, we, and they. It's easiest to complain about them. What usually is hardest for most people is to say, I'm not perfect yet, out loud in public. But we really need all the different kinds. And I think we don't always get that. So I think that would help things a bit. Okay, some examples quickly: company culture, improvements in automated testing or continuous integration, all kinds of people issues, improving our basic skill sets, more training in that area, get a manual, watch some videos. Another key one, but there are many others, improving the whole flow of information, particularly details about the story, so that they feel as they start each of the 8 or more stories per sprint that they have all the details they need to be successful. And I think that would improve productivity quite significantly. And it's often a key issue. Anyway, there are lots of other examples. I just wanted to mention them. Again, the impediments must be prioritized. So by ROI, in my view, that is to say, benefit over cost. Pretty basic, but at least we need to say it. So this is just to reiterate, we kind of said this before, the Scrum Master is fixing impediments, they're helping or getting others or helping others fix impediments more quickly or more in a higher quality, more correctly. And then they're, so to speak, putting it all together. So for example, there might be dependencies about things we work on sprint to sprint to sprint, so that if we do that in a better way, we understand those dependencies better and then organize the work better, then we can be more successful more quickly. So the Scrum Master's got to have a key influence in that organization of the impediments. So that's a big topic in itself. At least I mentioned that quickly. Okay, so let's talk about some cases. I'm sure you all must have these cases. I doubt you would be that interested if you didn't have them. I'm going to discuss, you may have others, but I'm going to discuss 7 cases. And we're going to do it pretty quickly. We haven't got a lot of time. But let's go over the 7 cases. Okay, so one example. The Scrum team is only 4 people. And so in my view, the ratio is too high. We've got too much Scrum Master time compared to the overall team time. That needs to be in some reasonable ratio, and I think the ratio of 1 to 7 is quite reasonable. The ratio of 1 to 4, that is to say 1 full-time person out of 4 as Scrum Master to work on improving things, that's 25% of the time. I think that ratio is too high, and so I think that's a reasonable situation. Okay, so what's the answer? In my view, the normal answer should be that we need to have a bigger team. And there's a long discussion about how that would work out and so forth, but at least I think that's the main answer. If, or at least until that can happen, I think having a part-time Scrum Master at least is reasonable in that sense. But I'm expecting to have a bigger team pretty soon. Again, we might want to discuss that. Okay, example 2. we have a whole bunch of teams, as an example at least, and we have only 5 Scrum Masters, and therefore, and all the teams that we have are 7 people, or at least 6 people, so that if we had a full-time Scrum Master, it would be 7. So, okay, you've only got 5 Scrum Masters right now, but then the answer to me should be, you need to get 5 more Scrum Masters in your company, in your division, in your department, in your area. Either hire them in as already existing, vettable, pretty good Scrum Masters, or take people that you have and train them to be Scrum Masters. To me, that's a direct, easy, obvious solution to that problem. But it's a common problem, I think, and certainly one will have it for a while. You're not going to hire Scrum Masters in 2 days. This may take several months to accomplish, and so you're going to have to live with the situation for several months. But the goal should be well understood that we will soon have 1 Scrum Master per team. So to me, if we don't, we're working half-time. We've got 1 Scrum Master for 2 teams. So we're half-baked. And I think being half-baked, if you're in a professional situation, is not good. If you were trying to win the Super Bowl, you would not want to be half-baked. Super Bowls, I guess I'm thinking about that because of the football games over the weekend. Okay, so now we just don't want to play professionally. We're doing this, and so we decided to break the rules. For example, we're doing this with our family over the weekend. Okay, then, that's fine. To me, that's fine. Admit that you're not playing professionally. You're doing it, so to speak, just for fun. To me, you do not want to do this at work. I definitely do not recommend being unprofessional at work. But there will be times in life where, Scrum done quickly with the family in a non-professional way is still pretty good, pretty useful. But be honest and tell everyone we're not playing by the rules because it's just us and we're doing the chores over the weekend, and we're going to do the best we can. As one example. So fine. Okay, number 4, we do not have a stable team, but still it's about 7 people. Okay, reasonable. Certainly a big problem and causes issues. My view about impediments is you don't live with them, particularly if they're on the top of the list, which could be the top one. You don't just live with the impediment. You don't just say, well, I give up because of the impediment. You have to fix the impediment. Now, why we have an unstable team, there might be many root causes to that. So you might have to solve one root cause at a time before it starts to be very much more stable. Now, exactly how an unstable team justifies a part-time Scrum Master kind of escapes me, but certainly I see the problem. I mean, I'm not happy with a unstable team. Okay, example 5. We have a senior Scrum Master, and she's so good, people think, the managers think maybe, that we can split her across 2 teams. And she could do as good or better a job than unsenior, junior Scrum Masters could do for those 2 teams. And that last proposition, particularly unskilled and experienced Scrum Masters, that she could do, the senior Scrum Master could do a better job, might be true, but that doesn't, to me, justify having a part-time Scrum Master. She should be able to, because she's senior, should be able to increase the productivity more and faster. And then also maybe do additional work to affect the whole culture more broadly so that Scrum could be expanded further. But she still should be able to have quite an important role with 1 team in improving productivity. Now, one of the reasons is that the context switching destroys her productivity. So we're making her actually, for the company, less effective than she otherwise could be. So this isn't a webinar on context switching or project switching or task switching and all that kind of stuff. But at least I'm asserting, and I think there's tons of evidence that supports the proposition, that the context switching destroys her in this case, the senior Scrum Master, her productivity. Now, there may be a role for her that we're later going to call Agile Coach. That is to say, we're going to have a full-time Scrum Master for each of, let's say, 2 or 3 or 4 teams. And in addition to that, have an agile coach who coaches not only the Scrum Masters, but also the product owners, but also the team, and also the managers around the team. So having an agile coach, having a senior person, I'm certainly going to support. But I'm not liking the idea of making her, in this case, the senior Scrum Master, part-time on 2 teams or more, which does happen out there. Okay, so that's the 5th example. 6th example, I don't know. To me, this example is almost a joke. There's so much mayhem. I use the word mayhem because of those advertisements. I see so much of that guy making a mess on some insurance company. That we thought, what the heck? We'll be consistent with the mayhem and have a part-time Scrum Master. So we've got a not stable team, a weak team, a demotivated team. What the heck? Let's have a part-time Scrum Master. Exactly what the logic here is, I guess, is that we just are trying, almost seemingly trying not to be professional, and therefore why not part-time Scrum Master as well. I think these things often come together. Whether there's a logic to that, well, definitely that escapes me. Okay, number 7. I do hear this argument quite a lot, that we are so good already, we only need a part-time Scrum Master. And my answer to that is that's not a good idea. Most teams, when they say that they're as good as they can get, they are not yet hyper-productive. And excuse me for a second. Looks like somebody's trying to get back in. Sorry, I'm not sure who that was that was coming in, but you're welcome. And I'm sorry that you had problems getting in. Let me just minimize that, go back to this. So you're almost surely not hyper-productive. I almost never see that they are. And then I have the question right now framed as American football, the Super Bowl. It could be any sport, hockey or football or volleyball, any sport really. Have you won the World Championship 2 years in a row? And you might have won the Super Bowl, but winning the Super Bowl 2 years in a row is extraordinarily hard. Very, very, very few teams do that. So far as I know, I've ever done it since 1970 or so. And it's very hard to do. It's very hard to keep the team that, whatever, I guess I'll call it special. And then, even if you did win the Super Bowl, can your team get better? And the simple answer is always yes. And almost always the best teams are most aware of how much better they can become as compared to the not so good teams. And is it worth it to get that much better? I think that, again, the answer is yes. So I don't find this argument very compelling, although it's understandable that people, I mean, it's clear that people think had this argument. They feel like they've gotten as high as they can be, they've plateaued, and they've heard people talk about how eventually we don't have a Scrum Master at all. Again, I don't like that argument. Okay, so what kinds of problems are you going to have along the way? Or what is some of the background? So one is they've never even heard the idea of a full-time Scrum Master, so it's hard for them to do that. Another is I use the quote. This is more or less a quote from Dante's Inferno: "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." So I think a lot of people don't really believe that their teams can become very much better, and that's another key part of the root cause of its problem. Another key is that their Scrum Master is not very good, or either that one or just in general the Scrum Masters aren't very good. Again, maybe a lot of root causes behind that. I don't think the people are fundamentally not good, but maybe they haven't been trained. Maybe nobody's explained the job well. Maybe they don't have a really good Scrum Master to emulate. But anyway, I can imagine that one of the key problems is that some or many of the Scrum Masters are not very good. Excuse me, somebody's trying to get in. Let me put them in. Okay, oops, sorry, I gotta minimize this. Can start. Okay, the Scrum team does not identify good impediments. We talked about that. I think the root cause of that typically is that we haven't asked them well enough to identify the good impediments. They're often reluctant to talk about certain things that have often never been talked about in the company. So that happens actually, and it's understandable. It's a hard issue to deal with if you're a Scrum Master. So I bet some of you have had to deal with it to get them to identify the good impediments better. We don't track velocity at all. So it's hard to get excited about doing all this if you don't see the improvement in the form of a simple metric like velocity. and then we don't attract the velocity across multiple sprints. So those are at least a bunch of, here's a few more, the key problems. The department is unwilling to admit to the truth. They're, at least for some of the key things, they won't agree that that's an impediment, or they won't even talk about it. Occasionally, not often, this is usually not totally organizational, but more situational. But anyway, in a similar way to the department thing, the organization is unwilling to change. One's about admitting the truth, the other's about actually taking action on the truth. So that does happen. We have unstable teams, we talked about that. We have demotivated teams. We do have people that don't want to follow any rules. Scrum doesn't have that many rules. It's a very, very simple game. So I'm not that sympathetic. I am sympathetic that all the rules of waterfall were way too much. I am totally sympathetic with that. But the idea that Scrum has too many rules and that having a full-time Scrum Master is one of them, I'm not very sympathetic. I guess that reminds me of another problem that we didn't mention, which is some of our Scrum Masters, and I'll use this example, which is not the only case of this, are former project managers, and they're used to pushing the team. And that is not a fun experience if you're a member of the team. So that people will object to that, I can sympathize with. That's not the role of Scrum Master that we want to have, but that's the role that happens often, that people sort of slide into. And in that sense, following that person's rules, taskless, can be quite frustrating. Okay, so let's take a moment. If you can, take a minute or so and write down your questions in the chat box. I know, let me go like this and open. This is the chat box. So if you could, for the sake of the others, write down your question. Nope, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read to everybody. I hope you can see the chat box. I tried to just identify it for you. Hopefully it popped up on the top, so to speak, for you. So if you have questions, or excuse me, whatever your biggest question is, if you could identify that in the chat box. Or maybe that you don't have any. Or maybe that you can't find the chat box. But it's, so am I taking it that no one has a question? Apparently that's so. Okay, so let me ask you two questions.
Joe?
Yes, yes.
Joe?
Is this Swarna?
Hey, Swarna here. Yes, I'm putting in a question. Just I'm a little slow. I'm slow typing it in, but I'm putting in one single question. But if you want to go ahead with what your question is, you can answer my question after this. If that's,
go with yours. Go with yours first.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
We'll just say it out loud as you're typing.
Sure. So basically, what's been happening is that at this current opportunity that I'm working with, I work as a business analyst. I'm kind of like the Scrum champion of the team as well. Okay. But the company has been unable to provide stable Scrum Masters for the team, in the sense that we've had different Scrum Masters every 2 months.
Yes,
where
okay.
People come in with different ideas and they're not being able to provide one. Either the Scrum Masters join the team and then they have to leave for another opportunity, they go away, or they are traveling, so they're not being able to keep up with the pace. Or
yes, and I mean the first thing to say is that has happened before. You're not the first one to experience that, and I can hear in your voice, and I can easily imagine how frustrating that is for you and the team. So I'm very sympathetic. Yes. Do you think the root cause of that is any of the things that we've already discussed, or something else maybe? I'll give you time to think, and then suggest an idea to maybe more to the other folks as you're thinking about that. So the reason I asked that of Swarna is, I'm saying to the others, is that if we can identify the root cause, then we can hopefully have a better chance of going to the right person and talking to them in a logical way and convincing them to correct this problem. So that's why my first question to Swarna really is, what does she think is the root cause for why this is happening? I could imagine several, but anyway, I'm sorry, you had time to think, Swarna. How do you see it as the root cause in this case? Or at least the
I
biggest one?
believe, sure. I'm not really sure, whether it's the finance or what could be the reason why they're not being able to find decent Scrum Masters, but that is, so I'm looking at it right now, and one of the causes is they're not being able to find a decent Scrum Master for the team.
So they're finding, they bring someone in and they find that they're not very good. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Possibly.
Yes.
Either the company does not feel they are decent enough, or the candidates who are working with him as a Scrum Master find another opportunity where they easily want to move into.
Yes. Okay. So one root cause behind
probably
that.
Too much availability of, yes. There's probably an abundance of Scrum Master opportunities, and people are just willing to skip from one team to another without giving themselves consistency.
Yes.
And working with one team as a long term.
So that's a real problem. So that might be easy to talk to the managers about. It certainly occurs to me, and I certainly think I see this, is that often they don't pay well for the Scrum Master job. So obviously, if you're not getting paid well and you're kind of below where you quote unquote want to be, if you can make a few bucks more per hour, it's an opportunity you're going to take if you feel like you're already below water, so to speak. Whereas if you're being paid well and you really like it, then you don't listen to the new opportunities at least as easily as much. The same amount of dollar differential wouldn't be as attractive to you if you're already making a nice pay packet, so to speak. You wouldn't be as attracted to that as easily. So that could be the root cause. I can imagine a bunch of others. Okay, let's Eric's got one. So why don't you just say it out loud, Eric? Or is this a question to her, to Swarna, Eric? I guess Eric's having trouble being on mute. I hope everybody, let me read what he said in the chat window in case people can't see the chat window. I think Swarna maybe can't. He says, does your company...
Can you hear me? It was
Yes.
more a question for Swarna, because if you don't have a leadership in, a champion in your leadership role, like higher up,
yes,
to support that, it's hard. It's hard to kind of control that, eh?
Absolutely.
We have that in, yeah.
Absolutely. And then if you do, Swarna, or if you can find one, often you've got to go through the process of connecting all the dots so that not just they say it, but it ends up happening in practice so that therefore your problem gets fixed. But I do agree with Eric that you want to have, and then you Swarna want to identify who is the champion, in whatever they call it, senior leadership team, whatever phrase they use, but higher up in the management chain, that is championing the Scrum and Agile approach. And then hopefully they can be persuasive, and not merely persuasive from a power point of view, but also persuasive in terms of, this is how we want the culture, all these kinds of things. They connect the dots so that people can agree readily, let's go ahead and change things. I'm not sure how many different situations. I think I know, Swarna, that you've been in several. So perhaps you've already seen this kind of the importance of this already in different situations you've been in. Any comments, Swarna?
Sure. So I think one of the other root causes of this issue could also be that the leadership is only looking at contract positions for these Scrum Master roles, and they are not interested in hiring people full time.
Yes.
So they're moving from one team to another, but they're on a 6-month contract position. And so once that 6-month contract is done, they are either moving out of the company or moving into moving into a different opportunity. So that's one of the reasons why I think there's no stability in the Scrum Master role. The company does not feel compelled to start to hire Scrum Master positions as a full-time position and start to work with the vision of being more consistent in the Scrum practices and the Agile practices.
So I don't know this person, but in defense of Eric's idea and the kinds of people that I sometimes see, often they don't see the data, the information to connect the dots that these contract Scrum Masters are leading to these kinds of problems. So if you could help gather not just one case, but several cases of it, or you and some other Scrum Masters or other Agile advocates in the team level, if you can show them that this is a problem and that the fix might be to have either longer term contracts or not use contract people but use internal, whatever the better solution might be, then they might actually buy in and support that solution. But you often they're quite busy, and so you've got to help them see what's really going on. Anyway, well, you get an idea, and I'm.
Absolutely.
You get an idea that may be helpful later on. Okay, so let me ask you all if you
Thank
can.
you.
Hopefully, everybody can get into the chat window now. Oops, what happened? It was stopped as the sharing window was closed. I didn't mean to close the sharing window. Okay, let me open it up again. Sorry, guys, just a second. So I'm down to, this is not the right one. Okay, I want the other one. This one. Excuse me, now I can share it. How do I do that? Go back to here. I go to share. Go to this one. And share. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that glitch. I think you're seeing it now. Okay, so we want to play this. Hopefully it works. Okay. So the next question I have, whoops. So I do want to address some of these issues next time, in the next webinar next month. Okay, so my question for you. I guess this, to me, this is too easy, but was this helpful, this webinar for you? I hope it was. But anyway, what do you think? Was it helpful? Or you might start to say what was the most helpful, which is kind of question 2. Which slide, thought, idea was the most useful to you? So I guess since we're a little bit late, I guess if you could answer sort of some combination of 1 and 2 as a quick comment in the chat window, that would be great. So I'll give you a moment to do that. Can everybody see it? The slide? Can you see it?
Yes.
Kathy?
Okay. We can see.
Okay, it's where I can see it. Okay, good. Then as you're thinking, as you're writing, hopefully you're about to write at least. Maybe you're typing, haven't hit return yet. At least I wanted to say thank you. The time is almost up. You see, hopefully you have the slide deck. Karen, did you get the slide deck?
I can't find the slide deck.
Did I get the slide deck? I haven't checked.
Okay, I sent it to your associate, your colleague, and she may not have forwarded it to you, but if you can send us your email address, we'll send it directly to you. We're also going to post the slide deck, and maybe we can show you where it's posted in case you want to, if for whatever reason you want to download it again. We're also
I'll be able to get it from her, so it's not a problem.
Okay, but be aware, we're going to post it on the blog, and we're going to also post on YouTube the video and the voice and so forth. So that'll be available. Later, when you have a moment, send us an email about other topics you'd like to see, you'd like us to address. We're asking you, we're going to be asking others as well. But as we see your topics, we'll try to sort of slot them, and we're trying to do one of these for about a half an hour each month. So we'll slot them in a couple months further down the road. You can give us a 1-line topic. You can write a paragraph, whatever you'd like about that. But we certainly love to address the topics that are of concern to you.
Joe, do you have anything for Scrum of Scrums, like support for those scaling up?
I've written about that a lot on the blog. So send me if you need something right away. I can do I can do a webinar about that, or about scaling more broadly. But I've definitely written about those kinds of things on the blog. So if your question's more immediate, you can say that, and I will try to give you blog posts.
Yeah, how we can track progress, because it's so huge, it's hard to track progress on those kind of big things.
Yes, very good issue. Very good issue.
Yeah, that'd be great. You can have I'll send an email.
Okay, very good. Please do. Sure. Okay. So did anybody answer the question as to which piece they like best? I didn't see anything. I don't think I saw anything in the chat window. Okay, if you, why don't we wrap it up for now? But I appreciate your talking to you. As I said, we'll put these things up. There are others in the past that you can also look at. We really enjoyed it. Thank you, and we'll keep you informed about the next one. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.